Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started with the July meeting of Government Contract Review. See, first item on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes of the. I guess I should. I guess we probably need to take a roll before I get started.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Present.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Pollock,
Here.
Senator Meredith,
Present.
Chairman Hart.
Here. All right. Now that we've taken roll, we've verified that we duly have a quorum. Now we're going to get started. First item on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes of the June 13th meeting of the committee. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Senator Senator Douglas, excuse me, and Representative Pollock. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith, Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Number of items on the agenda today are 867 in the amount of $828,783,983.70. All vendors are registered with the Secretary of State's office. Next order of business is consideration of the agenda, including the personal service contract list, PSC amendment list, memorandum of agreement list, memorandum of agreement amendment list, the Kentucky Entertainment Incentive Program agreement list, and the corrections list, except for those items selected for further review. Do we have a motion to consider the contracts reviewed without objection? Motion made by Senator Meredith.
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith, Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Let's see. The first item on the pool list is with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, and is number 42 on the routine PSC green list. If the representatives are here, please come forward and please identify yourself for the record. We are still spiraling in, aren't we?
She said she gave you
Yeah,
a shit.
somewhere.
Commissioner Rich Storm, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife.
Michael Scott, Director of the Engineering, Infrastructure, and Technology Division.
Melissa Trent, the Assistant Director of Administrative Services.
All right, thank you guys for being here. If y'all could, please raise your right hand and we'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you so much. And I think Senator Meredith has some questions to begin with.
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and thank you folks for being available to us this morning. I appreciate it. The reason I pulled this particular contract was just the size of it. $8.3 million over a 3-year period. Looks like a tremendous undertaking by someone, and just want to have an opportunity to understand the scope of this contract and how it's going to work, and how this particular firm was selected. So,
I'll hit high level first, and I'll let Michael touch on it. But I want to thank the General Assembly for helping us to make this project happen. And obviously, it is a large contract. It's a large-scale property of 54,000 acres easement, the largest conservation project in our history. So I want to thank the General Assembly for helping us to get to this point. And I think we're making big strides right now to get where we want to be on it. But I'll let Michael give you specific updates on it.
Yeah, so as far as the process of selection, it went through the RFP process, and Finance conducted that as they do for all engineering and architectural services. And so it had a selection committee where they evaluated the firms that were submitted, and they selected a firm based on qualifications. And as I said, that was handled in Finance Cabinet, and then there was legislation that gave us the procurement to take it over, and so we took it over from there. And as far as the scale of it, I mean, it's really just the size of the property, so 54,000 acres. if you break it down a per acre cost, it falls in line with our other surveys. So it's a little over $100 per acre to survey. We had one we did this spring that was more expensive, and we comparing it to one that was a couple of years ago, it falls right in line with those. So it's really just the size of the property, so 54,000 acres. So as far as how it's going to be conducted, they'll survey, and we'll just keep track of their progress. And we've have yet to, I guess, have that kickoff meeting with them, but we will here in the next week or two. And they have discussed, I guess, having a GIS system where as they survey, they can track in real time their progress. We'll meet with them monthly or bi-monthly just to go over that process and pay them throughout those 3 years as they conduct the survey.
Will this be a contract of amount not to exceed, or is it set at that amount?
It's set at that amount.
Okay. How many acres again?
54,000.
54,000. That's a good chunk of land.
Well, may I add, this includes signage and stakes and very rugged terrain, and so people are going to have to be in really good shape. I'm not sure that I'd qualify to be a mountain rappeller like some of these folks that are going to survey it, but it's absolutely a great project. It gives us ownership in the southeast part of Kentucky. We have a lot of leases, but this gives us the opportunity to have hunting property in perpetuity, and so we're really excited about what's going to happen with this in the future.
It is a great project for our Commonwealth. Just curious in the RFP if physical fitness was a part of the requirement there.
Well, it should be, if not, yeah.
You mentioned working in cooperation with the finance cabinet. Explain that again.
So I guess prior to Senate Bill 217 in 2022 and Senate Bill 241 in regular session 2023, it was the finance responsibility to procure all engineering and architectural services. And so I guess really 241 is the one that kind of cleared that up. But they took the lead as far as issuing the RFP, and they assigned the selection committee, and as outlined in, I guess, KRS 45A 810. And so they followed that process, and then the legislation changed, pushed that responsibility over to us, and then we took the ball where they had got it and finished it with executing the contract.
Well, related to the responsibility you folks have assumed, I think that caused some rift in terms of having access to other statewide contracts. What's the state of that? I know we're a little off subject here, but where are we with that relationship?
I'll let Melissa handle that one.
So currently, right now, we are working with the finance cabinet, and we have gotten a list of statewide agreements, and they are adding us back to any agreements that we need to utilize. So, yeah.
So no obstacles there that we see?
Not currently, but we've had a few that are a contract or basically quote-based. So we're trying to work out the details on what we need to submit versus what other agencies are submitting. So we're trying to work those details out.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, that's all the questions I have.
Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Is all this land within the boundaries of the Commonwealth?
Yes.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And you touched on this. I had one question, but you've kind of answered some of it when you were discussing the process of awarding the contract. From your testimony, I'm assuming that the finance cabinet awarded the contract, or did
No.
you all
So they
finish it and award it?
Yeah, we finished it and awarded it. So they sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Well, but the only question I have, and I mean, I realize this is not a Kentucky company, but did we have Kentucky companies apply for this process?
Yes, and I guess so. The survey portion of this company was formerly known as Vaughn and Melton, and they were based out of Middlesboro, which is local to this. And so the majority of the surveying work is being performed by what was formerly known as Vaughn and Melton,
Okay.
which is a Kentucky company. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Representative Pollock.
Sorry, I'm a little bit more clarification on the finance budget process. Just so, I mean, obviously it's a huge contract, but they basically bid it out and then brought you guys the bids.
So for engineering services, it's awarded based on qualification.
Okay.
And then once the number one firm based on qualification is selected, then you negotiate the fee with that firm.
I got you. Okay. Now, who negotiates that? Finance budget or you guys?
It was, and because of the change in legislation, it was essentially both.
Okay.
The initial fee proposal was sent to finance, and then once the legislation happened, we took that fee proposal and negotiated with them to execute the
So
contract.
it sounds like you guys are working together for this
Yes.
process.
Yes.
It's good. It's good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion to consider the contract?
So
Review- Motion by Senator Meredith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. All those vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion passed. The next item on the pool list are with the Kentucky State University and are numbers 49 on the routine PSC green list and number 8 on the 10,000 and under goldenrod list. If representatives are here, please come forward, identify yourself.
Dorothy Daly, Coordinator of Grants and Sponsored Programs.
Okay.
Good morning. I am Michael Daly, and I'm the interim provost at Kentucky State University.
Okay, if you all would, please raise your right hand and we'll swear you in here. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And I think Senator Meredith has some questions on this.
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Does Kentucky State currently have an online program?
Yes, sir, we do.
Can
Can
you?
everyone more elaborate?
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir, we do. The online education program has actually been around for quite some time. We were part of a grant some years ago. I don't go back that far, but I was actually at the Kentucky Department of Education when a small grant came out about starting online special education programs at universities. There were 2 private institutions and 1 public, and Kentucky State happened to be the public institution, and I believe that dates back to 2010, 10 or 11. But yeah, we currently have online programming with graduate and undergraduate programming. Our Achilles heel, if you will, is no one knows that. And so marketing and redesign is critical to making sure we have a successful implementation and experience for our students.
So this particular contract, if I may, is just to enhance that, to make it more marketable and make people more aware of it?
That is correct. Its intent is actually a forensic analysis first to make sure that we're doing things the right way. I was actually brought to Kentucky State University in the spring of 2019 to revitalize the online program. And so we did all the infrastructure things. We've trained our faculty. We made sure we had consistent practices in place for online tutoring, things that made our SACS accreditation for online education. We also meet the NC-SARA standards. We implemented Quality Matters, which is making sure we have accessibility in our course design and development. And then recently, over the past year and a half, we've invested in the Association of College and University Educators, which is a pedagogical approach to making sure teachers are teaching effectively online.
How many students are currently educated online?
It's abysmal, unfortunately. I think we have right at 150. And so again, marketing and making sure the design is responsive in nature so that it's device agnostic, it meets the ADA requirements is critical for us being successful.
One other reason I pulled this one, I think it was 3 years ago, we had one of our universities bring us a retroactive approval for one of these contracts, which, it's just not a good thing to do. And as they were explaining it, they said, well, it's no big deal because it doesn't cost the state anything. I go, well, what do you mean? They said, well, it's paid for, we share tuition. I said, okay, how much of the tuition are they getting?
Mm-hmm.
and I think at this particular firm it's 50% of the tuition. I'm thinking if there's kind of that kind of profit margin in online education, maybe we need to shut down all of our land-based universities, all go to online. But I thought that was a little bit excessive. And of course, it was the first year of the program, and I thought as it grew in volume, that percentage should decrease. So I'm curious how is this one structured?
And different? That's a great question. Actually, as recently as the last 3 to 5 years, the U.S. Department of Education has sort of cracked down on what we are calling online program management systems. There are two basic models. The one you described is a shared revenue model. And that shared revenue model is negotiated between the institution and the company. And it basically is set up to say if we had a whole lot of capacity, we'd probably have a larger portion of the profit share. If we didn't, we'd have a lower, and it makes it more difficult to get out of the hole, if you will, because you're making money or you're operating your business, and then you have someone pull it. In this case, our particular contract is a fee or pay for service. So we negotiated our contract to show that these are the services we need to make sure we are sustainable. These are the services we need to make sure we build capacity. And these are the services we need to make sure that the service delivery is of quality and the students have a good experience. In that case, the revenue that we generate comes back to the university, and it's not a shared revenue agreement. And I think the U.S. Department of Education is leaning that way. And so there's a lot of things out there. So we don't want to create an opportunity where we put universities at risk. And I think that's their position. And so we considered that as we went forward. In fact, the selection process, the vendor that happened to be selected actually spoke to that and how they're not a part of the bullseye, if you will, if the U.S. Department of Education is looking at.
Well, I like that, and those firms should be part of a bullseye because they've got nothing to sell other than administrative services of these programs. Unless they have you folks, they don't have a product to sell.
That's
So
right.
it doesn't make sense, and they should be just reimbursed for the administrative cost of it, not this revenue sharing that we're talking about. So I appreciate that that's a position that you folks are taking. And Mr. Chair, I have no other questions.
Okay. Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask two questions?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Chair, thank you, sir. You mentioned that the faculty are already trained, and you mentioned that the infrastructure was in place. Could you help me just a little bit with why it's going to cost $2.3 million
Okay.
to implement this program?
Yes. Senator Douglas, we offered, well, let me start with the capacity that we currently have. We did offer training in quality matters. Basically, it's a set of standards that say this is how you organize and facilitate online instruction and make sure it's accessible. Then we raised that bar and said, okay, are we teaching to the level that engages the student and make sure the student is having a good experience? And that was the AQ investment. This particular contract does exactly what Senator Meredith was talking about. It helps us with building capacity on the administrative services, so it helps with our branding, our marketing, our enrollment services, our communication services around that enrollment, the support services that are needed, that we don't have the capacity in building at this time. It also further enhances once they redesign our instructional look and feel, then they'll go back in and make sure that they use the faculty as subject matter experts. So if we're teaching something in the social sciences, the faculty say, this is the content I have, this is what I want the children to learn and be able to do, here's how I am going to approach the learning. Then the instructional designers will help that content come to life so that faculty member will stay in the role of that subject matter expert and be able to deliver and enhance the opportunity for those students to engage the content, regardless of if they're rural, urban, whatever access they need, we meet them where they are and then take them where they need to go. And that is a part of the pedagogical development that still needs to happen. The other aspects of what we need in this particular contract to help us build capacity is delivery. In the graduate program, we really don't have a dedicated graduate program services person. So we have to build capacity on how to manage graduate programming instead of it being a shared responsibility of a couple of people. And not that they will give us that individual, but they'll help set up the infrastructure so that we can manage that. And as we build capacity and the revenue is generated, then we can have some sustainable practices in place. So that 2.4 million covers the beginning and end of operations and the effort to build capacity so we can sustain it on our own.
Last question,
Yeah,
sir.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My last question, then I'll shut up. We talk about this should generate revenue. So am I to understand this is the last time we'll see this contract?
This is a one-year contract to get us up and going. There is an option if we need it to come back and may help us further development. It is my goal to make sure that we have everything in place. It's difficult to say how that's going to do because we're relying on a market that we haven't embraced yet. So I'm hoping, but if there's an opportunity, a contract may come back. They gave us we asked each of the vendors actually that responded to the RFP to look at a 3-year plan, even though we only had funding for one. But we want to do all the things you see here in the scope of work are for 1-year implementation, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as I hope I read correctly, you have 3 programs currently that are in the baccalaureate and 3 in the master's degree and 1 doctoral online program. Yeah, are you going to expand any of that or?
Yes, sir, we are. In fact, as part of our management improvement plan in partnership with the Council on Post-Secondary Education, we're actually this item is also listed to develop online pathways that came out of also House Bill 250. We are approaching the expansion of online programs, and the way we started with that was a viability study of what we currently have in all our programs, what we're offering. So we have typically been a mile wide and an inch deep. You know, we can offer everything to everybody, but we're not really getting much traction. So the viability study helped us cull that down to what do we need to offer? What is our market? How do we impact that market? So we're doing the same thing with online to make sure we go from there. So yeah, we have a doctorate program in nursing. We have 3 master's programs. We hope to have an additional 2 master's programs, 1 in cybersecurity. Actually, we're shifting that to online. 1 in network administration, that is shifting to an online environment. And we also want to grow a program in public health and public health administration. And then our online undergraduate programs will be looking at 2+2 opportunities that we currently have established with, or establishing with our local community colleges across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we're going to need 2 separate motions for each one. For each item. Oh, wait. Okay. So we're going to go, before we go on to item number 8 on the goldenrod list, let's go ahead and get a motion for item number 49 on the routine PSC green list that we just discussed.
Motion.
Have a motion by Representative McCool, a second by Senator Meredith. All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
I vote aye, but may I explain my vote, please?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a worthy way to go, but given that our programs are supposed to be revenue generating, I'm going to really take the high road and assume that the people that we're working with are trying to make them revenue generating as quickly as possible. And so I'm voting aye with the expectation that we will not see multiple contracts like this in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Chester Burton, Senator Yates, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion passed. And at this time, since you're all still at the table, let's go ahead and talk about item number 8 on the goldenrod list. It's 10,000 and under. And Senator Meredith, do you have a question on that?
Yes, I do. Brief, and I think you folks know what the issue is. And I appreciate the explanation. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Do you understand why I don't like retroactive contracts?
Yeah, and we don't either, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We've got obviously a transition in staff, and this is a case where the grant is funded every year through the Collaborative Center for Literacy Development through the state to train teachers in reading. What happens is every year we get a new memorandum of agreement. Last year in July 2022, when the memorandum came, the PI, one of the faculty members at the university, sent it to the provost at that time to get signature. And then when she went to begin expending the funds, she contacted our office, in grants and sponsored programs, to figure out how to pay Dr. Higgins. In the past, Dr. Higgins was the primary investigator of this grant, and she was an employee of K-State. So this year it was new because she had to be paid outside. She was on the approved vendor list. When she contacted us, we did some investigation. Again, I'm new since March. All this transition in staff, we're backpedaling trying to find paperwork. The memorandum had not been signed. So we sent it to legal counsel at that time, took all the steps necessary to get everything, legal, binding, what we needed, sent it through, and then found out we had to do the personal service contract. I was unaware of that, neither was the PI. So we followed every step, documented everything, sent it through. The problem with the payment obviously being late is she had started this in January, just reaching out. When the PI said, we need to pay her in April, the work had been going on. The grant actually ended in June 30th. The total grant ended. The legislature is not funding it anymore. The Collaborative Center is closed. So that's why we were late getting this up. And I do understand that that is not ideal, and we've got steps in place to ensure this does not happen again. We've got staff, we've got policies. Our office is fully staffed, and we're working with all the PIs on campus for all their grant and accounting needs. And I apologize that it is retroactive.
No need to apologize. Understand the challenges, particularly for Kentucky State University, and please know you have our full support.
Thank you.
But in a different time, the number of retroactive requests that we receive were voluminous, and that's not the way we should do business. So this just gives us an opportunity to make sure we're all on the same page and we all understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And I try to tell people that when we approve a contract, it's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. Mm-hmm. The general public should know that this is a good contract. It does fit the parameters of model procurement code. So again, this isn't a wrist slapping. It's just an opportunity to sit down again, talk about here's why.
No, I appreciate that, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity to explain. We're trying to move onward and upward, our motto, and got a lot of policies and procedures and staff in place and a new president, and we're ensuring that policies are being followed.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, you have our full support, and I wish you the best going forward. But
thank you. We appreciate that.
Ms. Chair, if there are no other questions, comments, I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion by Senator Meredith to have a second. Second by Representative Pollock. All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Pollock.
Yes.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion passes, and I would also like to express my gratitude for you all taking steps to make sure that we don't have retroactive contracts. So,
of course, yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the pool list are with the Kentucky Teachers Retirement System, and our items are numbers 1661 on the routine PSC green list. If representatives are here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. Bo Barnes with Teachers Retirement System. I serve as Deputy Executive Secretary and General Counsel.
Okay, if you would, please raise your right hand and we'll get you sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much. And Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Barnes. It's good to see you again. And I'm not on pension oversight, so our interaction is kind of limited. So just want the opportunity to say hello, see how your summer's going.
Thank you. Very good, sir. Thank you.
No, I do have a question, and both these contracts are a relatively small amount, $85,000 each. The question I have, both firms, their rates exceed the maximum rate guidelines.
Yes, sir.
and I'm hoping you appreciate when we get these contracts, we don't get the contracts. All we get is a thumbnail description of what the contracts are for.
Yes, sir.
And for both these contracts, the description is identical. So my question is very simply, then if they're identical, then why are we paying one firm $477 per hour and another firm $300 per hour? Why don't we just let that firm that has $300 per hour do all the work?
Good question. I think we're getting very deeply discounted rates for both of these firms. I would think that probably they're charging other clients upwards of $600 an hour, but because we're a government entity, we got some favorable treatment, and same price as last year for both of these. Ice Miller is the one at the higher rate. We've used them for 10 years, and Williams and Jensen is the lower rate, the Washington D.C. firm. And I think we were able to negotiate a more deeply discounted fee with them because they're new. We were added them to our list of attorneys with the last RFP that was issued, and I think they wanted to get our business and show that they could do a good job, and that we should retain them. I would expect their fee will go up with the next RFP, that they will request more. Now, there are differences in the two. You are correct. We have some identical description. They're both large firms and provide a lot of services. Ice Miller, we rely on more for federal tax compliance. So we have an up to $85,000 amount for them. We expended a little under $11,000 for services rendered last fiscal year. But we use them a lot for some really difficult federal tax compliance issues they really are specialized in. Williams and Jensen, although they do that as well, we use them primarily on the health insurance side to monitor and help us make sure we are following federal health care law and also taking full advantage of federal health care subsidies. That's kind of their area of specialty, so we use them almost exclusively on health insurance, and Ice Miller for federal tax law compliance. And we expended about $35,000 of the up to $85,000 limit on Williams and Jensen for services rendered last fiscal year.
Well, I know sitting on this committee since I think it's 2018 that there's a long-standing relationship with Ice Miller. I know they're a good firm, very reputable. I'm just always concerned that we get too comfortable with the folks that we work with, and we don't do our financial due diligence and trying to make sure we're getting the best price. And I'm like you. I would anticipate next time that Williams Jensen comes, their fee's going to go up.
Yes.
In large measure because they know we're paying Ice Miller $477 per hour.
Yes.
I wish it would work the other way, that Ice Miller would say, well, they're paying $300 an hour, so maybe we need to drop our rate to $350. But I know that that's in a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world. So
yes, sir. I would say there's upward pressure on this level of expertise across the country for these kind of legal services. Right now, we are enjoying some really, really low rates, and we'll keep those as long as we can.
Well, my background's in healthcare. And we talk about paying rates like this. I think it's interesting. And of course, I've been retired since 2013. But we can have a surgeon do a surgical procedure and only get paid $125. And so we're talking about upward pressures on these fees. And I think it's kind of gotten out of kilter here, particularly when it comes to legal fees. They're too excessive. But again, I understand it is what it is. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. If I could, I'll entertain a motion, and the motion will be for both contracts.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Senator Merritt to approve. Second by Representative Pollock. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote nay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Pollock.
Yes.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next items on the pull list are with Murray State University, and they are numbers 69 through 76 on the routine PSC green list. If representatives are here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Still not on.
Here we go.
There you go.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jordan Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Government and Institutional Relations at Murray State.
Okay, if you would, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And Senator Meredith.
Good morning, Jordan.
Morning.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you.
This is a continuation discussion we had last month. And I think last month it was Eastern Kentucky University in Moorhead. And the concern I have with these contracts are all multi, and they're categories. And I appreciate that. I've always, if we follow the true intent of Chapter 45A, anytime that a contract's issued, should come to this committee. So we're kind of giving you folks carte blanche privilege to approve these by category. Mm-hmm. But we don't know who the vendors are, and we don't know how the amounts are. So I'm trying to put some accountability into the process. So I can't question the specifics of the contracts because I have no specifics available to me. But, you know, we look at something like mechanical and electrical engineering, 1.8 million. You know, how do I know this isn't Jordan Smith mechanical and electrical engineering? And we go down to land surveyor. How do I know this isn't Jordan Smith land surveyor? And I know I'm being just kind of ridiculous at that, but I hope you can see the dilemma that I have. And what we asked EKU and Moorhead to do was, I mean, we're in essence approving a budget. We're not approving expenditures. We're approving a budgeted amount here. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious for each of these categories, how much was spent last year. Mm-hmm. I know, again, what you're asking for this next year, but that helps me put all this into the perspective. Sure. And I would hope this is a process we could do every year, that here's what we asked for last year, here's what we spent, here's what we're asking for the next year, just to make sure that things are in line. And I know we've got some great inflationary pressures, and I would anticipate some of these will be high. I would move, Mr. Chair, that we approve all these contracts, but I'd ask a commitment from Jordan here that we could be provided with this information.
Yeah, we absolutely can.
And
do
I'd
that.
also like to see the vendor list.
Absolutely.
And
actually, I have the vendor list with me that I can share with staff after the committee meeting. And I want to say too, Mr. Chairman, Senator Meredith, thank you all for the asset preservation money, because the only reason we're able to do a lot of these projects is because of the $47.1 million you guys gave to Murray State in asset preservation funds. And then we obviously added the $7 million match. And getting back also to your point, I do want to make one reference. The reason the amounts in each of these contract numbers are larger than the previous year is because we're actually running into the same problem a lot of folks in the private sector are. We're having to use a pool of price contracts for each of these contract numbers just to give us the flexibility of, if one firm can't finish the project or runs into issues, well, then we can go to our price contract list and say, well, another vendor's been approved, so let's enter into a contract with them. And we will not get near, we will not use the total amount that we're asking for. It's just simply the flexibility for us to manage these small projects. But we can provide that breakdown of how much we used last year and compare it to this year.
When we first started this discussion with the University of Kentucky, because, again, voluminous contracts that they were requesting, and they assured us, well, we don't spend that much every year. Well, then how much do you spend? And I think their budget for contracts was like $300 million. We don't know how much spent, so they provide us a report each September as to here's what we asked for, here's what we spent. So, again, just bring some accountability to the process and keeps everybody straight and keeps everybody clean. So
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. We'll do that moving forward.
I'd like to also add, if you could you tell us which projects are in, or what projects you have in progress, to kind of give us an idea of what's in the works?
Absolutely. So within this list, for example, the structural and subsurface PSC 00824. That's for one of our oldest buildings, Blackburn Science Building, to do a structural assessment to determine what the longevity of that building is moving forward. There's a lot of HVAC upgrades in a lot of our older buildings. Under the energy management PSC, for example, we're putting in a new fiber ring all over campus, so fiber upgrades. Chestnut Street at Murray State. We have a walking bridge over it. So we're in the process now of finishing that. So some of this is structural for that. So just a lot of these kind of constant maintenance of old state assets with HVACs, stairwells, those kind of things.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I have a motion by Senator Meredith for approval. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Pollock. All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye, but I do want to explain my vote. I vote aye with the hope that you will provide us with the information that Senator Meredith has asked for.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the pull list is are with the Office of Controller. They are items number 87 on the routine PSC green list and item number 106 on the PSC amendment ivory list. If representatives are present, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
My name is Robert Long. I'm General Counsel with the Personnel Cabinet.
Okay.
And I'm Brian Thomas. I'm General Counsel of the Finance and Administration Cabinet.
Okay, if you would, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much. And Senator Meredith.
Gets old saying that, doesn't it, Mr. Chair? Appreciate you being with us this morning. Just want some explanation on this contract, because again, all we get is thumbnail descriptions of what we're trying to do here. But it says provide funds for organizational recruitment, marketing, branding strategies, including development of strategic sourcing plans that facilitate diversity of applicants. After award, and that's where I start to get lost. You're talking about the award of this contract?
Yes. So this contract is part of a recruiting marketing strategy as a tool for the statewide agencies. So to enhance the opportunity for agencies to recruit, retain, and ensure we're getting the best possible workforce, we wanted to create additional options for them to be able to work with a consultant to basically build strategies that were specific to those particular agencies. I will note that these are an up to, the contract amount is an up to amount. There is no guarantee of payment that anybody will actually make money on. This is up to the agency to determine that the services are needed, wanted, and can be provided. Ultimately, awards were given to 2 vendors. The way we envision this working, the agency desiring this type of recruitment and marketing help will define a scope of work, submit it to the Personnel Cabinet. That will then get approved and then submitted to both vendors to basically rebid it and compete against one another to see who can best serve the agency. And then the agency will make the final determination as to which vendor to go with and then oversee the production of their, ensure the completion of that scope of work.
And I guess that was my concern, is if we really don't know, we haven't identified the needs of each agency.
Well, I think it's well documented, Senator, that we have numerous open positions throughout state government. The number of applicants that are appearing on our registers have severely declined recently, and we're facing the same pressures that most of Kentucky employers and corporate employers across the country are, that it is difficult to attract, retain, or train and retain and keep good quality applicants.
That is universal, I understand that.
And so this is just a tool for those agencies who find those a bigger struggle. This is a tool that they can utilize if their budget allows for them to try to address those problems.
Well, let me talk about the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, 'cause that's one I work with most often. They're going to come to you folks and say, we need assistance in this area because we have turnover and all this. And so does that define the scope of the project?
Well, they won't just define like their need. They will decide what we want to get done. What are the items that we want? Each vendor provides has a list of services that they provide, whether it's be strategic planning, recruitment, help assisting with devising interview information, or a list of services. And so they will decide what services do we really need that will be targeted to help us attract the applicants, and then put together like what are we asking the vendors to produce. The vendors will then be given that scope of work and asked to provide an estimate for the agency to base its decision on.
Well, you mentioned vendors. Is Deloitte, are they serving as kind of the wholesaler?
No, there's actually two awards. All-Star Talent was another contract that was awarded. Their contract has been deferred to next month's GCRC meeting.
Again, I guess what I struggle with is, we haven't fully identified the need. When a need is identified, why wouldn't that be a separate and distinct RFP for that service?
Well, part of the need that is ongoing is that the hiring process in the state is always very time-consuming, and we often miss out on candidates because of that. The hope of this is to provide flexibility and be able to address the needs in a more timely and speedy manner to ensure that we're not losing out to competitors who can act quicker.
But are those challenges specific to each agency, or is a challenge specific just to the personnel cabinet?
No, it's throughout all agencies. Ultimately, all of our agencies are taxed with difficulty meeting fully staffing themselves and meeting all of their ready demands. Adding to that, trying to develop marketing strategies and to recruit is very difficult, and they don't have the staff to maintain that. This gives them an option to then employ these so that they can get it's difficult to take employees off of state required duties and jobs to have them to create marketing strategies or develop interview questions when it may be potentially helpful to have a vendor who helps market that and brings those quality candidates to quickly so the state can move more quickly to make hiring decisions.
Well, not trying to put words in your mouth, that's not what I'm attempting to do, but just trying to understand how this conceptually is supposed to work. Are we saying we can't do an RFP for each agency that may need a service because of the timeliness of this?
I ultimately, I'll have to say I'm not, may have to defer ultimately to finance and to the different agencies. My belief and understanding is this is provided quick flexibility to meet ever-changing demands, and that individualized RFPs would be difficult and more time-consuming to try to accomplish that goal. Again, this does this is not a guaranteed expenditure, but it allows the agencies to determine whether or not it would be a useful tool, and then pick the services basically a la carte and pay as they go, and to ensure that they're profitable. I will also note that this is a statewide contract, so it's not just executive branch agencies that can use these services. If LRC or AOC or even our universities may need these services, it may be a way that they could also opt in to try to use some of these services.
I would think it'd be very challenging to develop an RFP of this nature. I'm not sure how the responding vendors price their product if they don't know what the full scope of need is going to be. So how many firms responded to the RFP?
10.
10.
10. There were 10 10 proposals. 8 were determined to be responsive. 2 were determined to not be responsive. So those 8 were then evaluated based on the scoring criteria, and 2 contracts were awarded. And again, the way they priced it is the vendors is they've outlined the services they're available to provide and base those on a per hourly rate for providing those services. And so then if an agency provides a scope of work, the vendor will determine, well, we can do that work, we can accomplish your goal, and these are the services that will be needed, these are the number of hours that we think we will need, and that will give the agency an amount on which to base so they can do the most cost-based determination as who can most efficiently provide the services we're asking for.
So the $1 million price tag is an estimate by you folks?
It is, yeah, it is just an estimate. This is a new tool. This is something that we haven't tried before, and it is try to ensure that there was plenty of room that multiple agencies could use this. But it is absolutely not a guarantee that Deloitte or All-Star will receive that kind of money.
So during the RFP process, you didn't place any pricing constraints in the RFP.
I would have to probably defer to finance. Finance ran the RFP, and I honestly don't know what the criteria or whether there were any constraints.
And the RFP did require that the vendors submit cost proposals, and those cost proposals would have been compared against other vendors' cost proposals, and that was part of the scoring rubric that determined these two particular vendors were the best value vendors.
Well, obviously, my concern is if this is a $1 million contract, not to exceed $1 million, then probably end up being $1 million. But you've kind of given me some comfort in how this is handled. But I still don't know that this is the most cost-effective means of the way you're doing this. But I'll defer to your judgment, Mr. Chair. That's all the questions I have.
All right, Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to admit, I'm a little slow. I'm more confused now after the explanation than I was before we got started. Because we talked about replacing positions or being able to recruit people for positions because there are, and I heard the statement that there are multiple positions that are open. I guess my question, Mr. Chair, is do we assess in our state government if a position is open, whether that position even needs to be filled or not?
Yes, the open positions are assessed, and if a position remains open for a particular period of time, they're subject to being eliminated.
And I apologize for interrupting you. May I, Mr. Chair, just my last question? Is there a position ever eliminated?
Yes.
How often?
I couldn't tell you I don't have the information to say how often that happens, but it doesn't happen.
Okay. My concern is that and I apologize, Mr. Chair. My concern is that we recruit people before we assess whether or not we need to continue with those particular positions being open, which unfortunately allows state government to continue to be this huge giant that walks our Commonwealth. And if we're trying to be more efficient in our state government, I'd like to hear more about how we're trying to streamline things and hear a little bit more about how we're assessing whether or not particular positions need to be filled. And then once we determine that they need to be filled, this is what we're going to do to make sure that we get the best recruits for those particular positions. And that's where I'm sitting here. I'm not criticizing you, and I really thank you for the presentation. I just wanted you to know I was just a little confused.
Well, if I can try to address it a little bit from a high level, positions for different agencies, if they remain open and go unfilled, they are subject to being stricken or removed. Agencies, if they want to prevent that, and it happens as a matter of course, I apologize, I don't have the exact timing or how long it is. But if an agency wants to preserve that position, they have to produce a justification as to why that position needs to remain. So there is always ongoing kind of evaluation of whether a position needs to remain. These contracts will not, recruiting won't just happen. Recruiting will only happen if an agency determines, hey, we have a shortfall. We cannot retain or attract good candidates for jobs that we desperately need. And then we want to use this tool to help us do that.
Thank you very much. You've answered my question. I like that those last little statements that you made. That made this a lot more clear for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion for approval? Motion made by Senator Meredith.
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. And our next item on the agenda is item 106, and that's the Office of the Controller as well. And I do believe Senator Meredith has a question. Comment.
I do. Again, another large contract. And is this also one of those amount not to exceed?
That's correct, Senator. This is a not to exceed amount.
And I assume this is still tied to COVID to some degree?
That's correct. This is a contract for COVID testing. The utilizing agencies are the Department of Corrections and the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
Then given that the COVID pandemic emergency has expired, is there still a need for this contract?
So, Senator, I believe the answer to that is yes, and we have representatives here from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and I believe the Department of Corrections that can more specifically address that. But it's my understanding that since the end of the COVID emergency, that they have changed the administration of how COVID testing is done, and it's now done on a as-needed basis when individuals are are having symptoms instead of more wide-ranging testing.
I assume the majority, if not all of this, is federal funding. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Is there any risk of that funding disappearing?
So it's my understanding, and again, maybe our folks from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services are in a better position to answer this question, but it's my understanding that eventually funding for this particular contract will end.
Do you know how we're trending right now in terms of how much we've spent?
The trend is a significant reduction in spending since the end of the declared end of the COVID emergency.
Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, I'm Stephanie Craycraft, and I'm Deputy Commissioner for the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. And I do have, prior to the end of the public health emergency, our expenditures were running around $300,000 per month. And in June, it dropped all the way to $50,000. So again, we're only following the new CDC guidelines, which is to test folks that are symptomatic.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If that amount has dropped, I'm seeing the contract says no increase or decrease. I'm having I'm not as sharp as some of these other people up here, but we've had a dramatic decrease in what we're requiring each month. Why is the amount of the contract the same?
I'll address that from the Finance Cabinet's perspective. If we have a request to either increase or decrease the amount of a contract, we will do so. In this particular instance, there was just it's a not to exceed amount, and so the actual spend, as long as it remains less than the actual than the not to exceed amount, there's no real reason that you would have to adjust the contract amount. It's an estimate to begin with.
Senator or Representative Pollock.
Yeah, just clarification. This $54 million. You did say this is federal dollars.
That's correct.
All right, so state dollars are not affiliated in this number?
My understanding that these are federal dollars from a federal grant program. Do you want to address that?
It is a federal grant program, and the department's actually supplemented. Those funds come from the Department of Public Health from funds that they have available.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Douglas.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And these funds can only be used for this particular program and these purposes. Is that correct?
I would have to defer to the department on the grant. I'm not familiar with the grant.
Okay.
And I'm Andrew Yunt. I am the Director of Administration and Financial Management for the Department for Public Health. And we are actually offering up the funds to our sister agency to cover the cost, and they are CDC expanding lab capacity funds, and they're to be used between now and 6/30 of 2024.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. President Biden said COVID's over, and we see COVID testing. We see $54 million. So that's kind of the, just obviously the questions and the discussions we're having this morning. So I can get again clarification on some things. So I was kind of confused. I was hoping that I know COVID exists. It's obviously in my hometown right now with different ones, but obviously. Anyway, those are my concerns. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve the contract as reported?
So moved.
Motion by Senator Meredith. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Representative Pollock. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
I vote aye, but may I explain my vote, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may.
I'm voting aye, and the COVID emergency is over and has been over for quite some time. I think, and I know these are federal funds, but even at the federal level, we need to, in our states, be conscious of some of the fuzzy math that's going on. And we know that we're having some trouble in our elementary schools and our high schools and post-secondary schools with regard to our math, but we're also having funds in our adult world with respect to our math. And I'm just hoping that we can all start taking a look at these funds and know that these funds are coming from the taxpayers and they're not just coming up from the ground. So I am concerned about how the funds are going to be distributed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith, Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you guys so much. The next item on the pool list is with Personnel Office of the Secretary, and it is item number 107 on the PSC amended Ivory list. If representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Robert Long, General Counsel for the Personnel Cabinet.
Okay, and would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right. I've got a question on this one as well. As I think Senator Meredith does too, but I'm going to give him a break. I'll go first this time. The increase with for the past 30 years or so, our personnel, evidence shown that the Kentucky's personnel system has not kept up with the wage activity across the country, and the employee activity in the state or in our government has not been adequately assessed and reassessed with the changing climate and the changing times within the last 30 years. So I guess my question is, why do we continue going back to the same consulting firm or the same organization to do this?
Well, I will note that the consulting firm that we use has been their methodology has been implemented in Kentucky since 1987. It has evolved and been evaluated and has been modified and updated over those times. They also service 32 other states. They are respected in the private industry and internationally. They have an office as close to us as Cincinnati, and the office we deal with most often is in, I think, Maryland, Washington, D.C. area as their corporate kind of headquarters. The reality is that to suddenly shift or change would be my understanding, a monumental task and a large financial obligation. Now, it may be something that we do need to explore, and that's, I think, is part of what the requirements of this particular modification are. As you all are aware, House Bill 444 set a deadline of November 1st for the Personnel Cabinet to complete its job classification review as part of that process of trying to ensure that we can have information that we can adjust and to help the legislature in making its decision making. That bill also specifically appropriated $500,000 to the Personnel Cabinet effective this fiscal year for contractual assistance in completing that evaluation. So this amendment is basically to expend those funds with our contractor to help us complete that evaluation. Secretary Bailey testified last month, I think before the Interim Joint Committee on Appropriations and Revenue. We do believe we are on track to complete that review by the November 1st deadline. We are approximately 70% of the job classifications have in fact been reviewed and are being compiled. And this modification will allow us to continue that work as basically directed by House Bill 444.
Okay, thank you. And also, I mean, this is more of a comment, just more so that we can have the consistency of our message within this committee. This contract naturally has already been awarded some time back, but we are still dealing with a California company, and as long as California keeps us on their no business list, we as a state in the Commonwealth need to take that into consideration when we're working on this. And you all, we've had this discussion before. I'm just noting that for the record. Senator Meredith.
So I'm sure you recall, we've had several discussions about Corn Ferry over this last year, and it's been in place since the mid-'80s, which was almost a different world ago. But, you know, the contract description says that they're going to identify up to 100 distinct positions to be included in the job evaluation review. As part of their annual review of our program, why wasn't this already done? Why isn't that included in the scope of the work they're doing to maintain this current job classification system that they invented, that we followed since 1987?
So I have to concede that I don't totally understand their methodology, but the methodology is proprietary. It's been implemented into our merit system, and then ultimately we have an ongoing contract with them that they provide training and assistance to us, but how much review and how much they can do from year to year is very much dependent on the resources that can be allocated to them. I think for the past, in most years, the contract amounts have been very small and have not been not had the funds to actually be able to complete a full review of these job classifications. We appreciate the new emphasis, and we very much are thankful to the legislature for granting us this $500,000 that will enable us. Also know that recent legislation has made it a mandatory that we complete this kind of evaluation every 5 years. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. As Senator Douglas mentioned, the state government is a large entity, but with appropriate funding, we believe we should, and this should be a process that is continued every 5 years, and that we will be able to have that better information. But I think ultimately the real answer is just that there's not been funding to pursue that kind of review with the contractor in the past.
Well, I'll go back to 1987 that this system's been in place. And as you've noted, it's proprietary. We really don't know what's inside the black box. They just come in, do their business, and we get the final product, whatever that may be. And I think from this, it looks like that product is deficient. I think it's rather ironic that our legislature has allocated additional $500,000 to do this, and the increase is $560,000. It's kind of like showing our hand before we actually play the hand. But I'm just be quite candid. I don't like this firm. I don't like this relationship. I think part of the struggles we see the personnel cabinet is because of this structure that they have put in place. And I just wonder at what point in time we're going to say, let's see what else is out there that may do a better job and be more effective. But I just have troubles with this contract. But that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have a quick question. Are we looking at more than a 200% increase in what you're asking for? Am I reading this right?
The 500,000 is a large increase over the.
Well, my question was, are we looking at more than a 200% increase?
I haven't. I don't know.
Well,
off the
our
top of my head
numbers,
the
our numbers are here. Our numbers are here, and we're asking for 877,980, and it says an increase of 560. I apologize. I don't mean to be mean. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I really am not. I'm just a plain old country boy.
I don't take it as such.
Okay. I just want to make sure. But what I'm reading is more than a 200% increase. That's what I'm reading, and as Senator Meredith has said, we haven't. At least I can't find evidence of it either that we've looked at other companies that might be able to provide something similar for less. There may be. I would just ask that in the future, when these contracts come to us, I just want the cabinet to know that we're going to be looking at that, whether or not we can start saving the taxpayers some money. 200% is a lot, is a big increase, and I just want to express my concern for that.
Thank you, Senator. And you're correct. It is a large increase, but it was an increase directed to us by the legislature in the passage of 444 for this purpose. With the time constraints of the job classification review and given the nature of the methodology that's being employed, it is just simply not practical to bid this out to a new vendor. I'm not even sure another vendor could do it in this situation. So I understand the committee's concerns, and I believe that's kind of what the aim of House Bill 444, the job classification review, is to kind of enable the agency and the legislature to have much more information moving forward. But in this scenario, with this modification, we're kind of backed into a corner.
Well, I understand. May I just? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Let's not do that. Let's not blame each other. Let's not blame the legislature. Let's not do that.
I'm in no way blaming the legislature.
Okay.
We're trying to pursue what the legislator asked us to do.
Okay, but we've used the same vendor for decades, and what we do is we look at what's brought to us, and we try to deal with that. So I know that we all want to work together, and I don't want to get in any blame games. What I'm looking at is how can we streamline our state government, which is why people send us here to guard their tax dollars. And that's one of the things you'll continue to hear me talk about, is guarding our tax dollars. And that's the only reason I ask these questions, for that purpose. But thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah. If not, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Senator Meredith. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Senator Douglas. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
But I'm gonna explain my vote.
Okay.
This is my first opportunity to serve on this committee, and obviously, I'm going to use Senator Douglas. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed sometimes, but what few times I've heard is we're in a time restraint, and again, there might be all these different situations. Again, this is my first time, but I think the committee's been pretty consistent on if we have optional bids, knowing you've done your homework and not used, we're in a time restraint, and I'm not talking to you directly. I've heard that a time or two, and I just want to publicly address that, in that that's not the best excuse. And I know there's certain situations, but I do want to go on record just to say that comment. Thank you.
Senator Meredith.
Explain my vote, please. I would probably acknowledge that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed either, but when 3 of our 5 committee members admit to that, it doesn't speak very well of our committee, so I'm not going to own up to that. As I said, I don't like this contract. I haven't for some time, but in order to meet the intent of House Bill 444, it's something that obviously had to proceed, but I would just encourage, again, everyone to take a hard look at what we're doing in the future, because it bothers me that we've been married to this system that's proprietary in nature. We really don't know anything about it. It's just there since 1987. So I vote aye.
Chairman Hart.
I vote yes, but I just want to comment briefly. It's been recognized. I've been on the committee for a couple of years now, and it's been talked about and recognized at multiple times that this might not be the best system for Kentucky. And at some point, we've got to move the Commonwealth forward. And at some point, the time constraints, and I realize with the legislation and stuff what you're up against, and that's why I'm voting yes. However, at some point, we're just going to have to pull the Band-Aid off and try to fix this or move forward with a better direction. Just because we've been in this relationship since 1987, that explanation is starting to wear a little thin, for the simple fact we're not making any efforts to try to correct it. And it's something that I've heard multiple times over multiple years on this committee. So I just wanted to point that out, but I do understand the situation you're in, and therefore I vote yes. Motion carries, and thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The next item on the pulled list is with the University of Kentucky and is number 17 on the $10,000 and under goldenrod list. If representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record and come forward.
Good morning, Chairman Hart, Representative Meredith, or Senator Meredith, my apologies, and members of the committee. I'm Bart Harden. I'm the Director of Government Relations. I have Barry Swanson, our Director of Procurement, and you have pulled a contract that we may have led to you pulling this contract. I will start there. This is a contract you saw a year ago.
Let me stop you real fast. Would you please raise your hand? Let's swear you in real fast.
Absolutely.
Do you honestly, or do you promise? I'm all tongue-tied now. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Now, continue.
Yeah, I think we may have led to a little bit of this confusion on this contract, and it may be a technical issue. We submitted this as a new contract, when actually this is the second year of a 3-year grant. You saw this contract a year ago, and I understand probably why this contract was pulled, given the fact that the investigator probably resides in the state of California. She is part of the grant that was received from NIH to our Department of Public Health. That grant totaled about $1.3 million over 3 years. This investigator that resides in California, Dr. Rabin, is doing a very small part of that grant, about $8,000 a year, to provide analytical data support on the research findings of our Department of Public Health in the space of diabetes research. So I'll answer any questions, but again, I may take some of the blame for this contract being submitted as a new as opposed to renewal.
Well, you pretty much answered my concern, and once again, my concern was more, I want everybody to realize, and I want to be on the record, that we're giving a consistent message here with California contracts and the situation we have with California. And you've answered my question. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Senator Meredith.
Well, I just love it whenever Bart falls on his sword. It's just curious to how many times he can do that. It's just,
Well, and in fairness, we may have to submit this as a new one every year. There may be some parameters within this grant, since it's federal dollars, that we can't submit this as a renewal contract. So there's a very good chance you may see this as a new contract next year for the third year of this grant.
well, that's discouraging, but it is what it is. But again, you know the objection. It is. But since we're committed to, I guess, the second year of a third-year grant, I will begrudgingly support this, but begrudgingly. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Do I have a motion for consideration of the contract review without objection?
So moved.
Motion made by Senator Meredith, second by Representative Pollock. He beat you this time.
Okay.
All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item on the pool list are with the Department for Medicaid Services and our numbers 63 through 68 on the routine MOA pink list and item 19 on the 5,000 or 50,000 and under gray list. If representatives are here, please come forward. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Lee. I'm the Commissioner for the Department for Medicaid Services.
Okay, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much. And Senator Meredith.
Gosh, Commissioner, you're spending a lot of money to figure out how the Medicaid program works. Let's take 63 as the starting point. You say we know little about the difference between potential versus realized access to care across Kentucky's 6 Medicaid managed care organizations, or whether additional differences vary regionally as well as across MCOs. I'll leave that with that, but just add the editorial statement that we know that the numbers that the MCOs give us for network adequacy are not correct numbers. And that's just not legislators talking. You may recall that we posed that question to Dr. Stack as well, and he said, no, it's not legit. So what are we going to do with this information once we receive it?
So I would like to first start off by talking about the state university partnerships. The state university partnerships are a long-standing relationship between the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. It funds approximately 70% of the Medicaid program. Also partnership with Medicaid and the universities across the state. These partnerships occur around every 2 years. The universities themselves submit proposals to the department. We evaluate those proposals every 2 years and decide whether or not those proposals will help us further the mission of the Medicaid program. The particular one that you did reference, as you know, Senator Meredith, when we look at our data in our system, we can do geo-mapping, and it will appear that every MCO has adequate access for their members. This particular research project with the University of Kentucky, and the universities do pay the state match for these contracts, so it does not come out of the Medicaid budget. So this particular contract will actually dig into our data and do more in-depth analysis to see how many providers see how many patients, to actually tell us if there are access issues in particular provider areas or in regions. So it will help us verify the information in our system or identify gaps in care, gaps in access by specific MCO. So we hope to use this data. The report will be completed in 2 years, and we hope to use this data to enforce the access standards that are currently outlined in the contracts with the managed care organizations.
Appreciate that education. What you're telling me from all these contracts that I had pulled, that these were in essence proposals that came from the universities to say, here's things that we would like to study. You review them and say it has value to the Medicaid program. So yes, we will do that.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, that one is definitely needed, but I think one of the issues, and I'm not sure whether this report will identify it or not, is that we don't have confidence in the information we have now as far as the number of licensed professionals. It's just not physicians, but across the whole broad spectrum. We don't know what the MCOs are using as their baseline. You know, we have, say, 500 physicians in Kentucky. I'm just throwing out a number, but we don't know how current that information is. We don't know how many have stayed, how many have left, how many have retired, how many are limiting their practice to 2 or 3 days a week. So I'm not sure we always get an apples-to-apples comparison. And again, this isn't just specific to physicians. I think it's every licensed profession that we have in healthcare in Kentucky. We don't have good information. So maybe I would encourage us that we need to look at some way to deal with the licensure standards, is how we collect this information so we get it more timely and it would be of value to us.
That's a very good point, Senator Meredith. And as you know, we have the Medicaid Advisory Council that makes recommendations to the Department for Medicaid Services on a routine basis. They actually made a recommendation a while back that we analyze the workforce of the state of Kentucky and its impact on Medicaid. We have a tentative or a draft report right now that we're looking at, and as soon as that report is complete, we will be sharing that with the Medicaid Advisory Council, and we will also be more than happy to share that with this committee or any other committee that would be interested in that study that we have recently updated.
I appreciate that. We need to make sure, since we don't really have a Medicaid oversight function has been incorporated into health services, is how we get that information conveyed to us, because we do need that. You know, I would hope we set up a process where it automatically comes to us rather than us to have to request it, because I think it's important. Let me move on to your other contracts. 65, 66, 68 all deal with maternal mental health. Is there some redundancy there?
Well, you know, Kentucky does rank near the bottom, if not the last, in maternal morbidity. So each of these contracts, each of these research projects are different. Some focus on the specific needs or the specific individual children, for example. Some focus on maternal, and some may be regional, but each one has a distinct difference to identify issues. And these research projects also, again, they're longitudinal. They're over a 2-year period. And at the end of that period, we hope to have some recommendations that will help the Department for Medicaid Services amend policies that will improve our care for pregnant and postpartum women.
Back to the way this is structured, again, the universities are coming to you saying, here's the studies we'd like to conduct, and you have to say, yeah, that's good. Does it require any federal approval as well?
No, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services does support the university partnerships, and they are well aware that we and other states use our universities to augment, if you will, Medicaid personnel to help us dig into our data and do more in-depth analysis. So this is supported by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they do pay a portion, which is approximately half of the cost of the contracts.
Does this process flow the other way, where you go to the universities and say, well, you may want to look at this, but we want you to look at this?
Yes, sometimes this is a huge process. Again, it's been in place for several years. We do have a committee within the department, or within the cabinet, actually. We pull the medical directors in as well to evaluate all of the proposals. I think this year we may have received 24 proposals. We focused on 12, and if we believe that we want to pursue those research projects, we will go back to the universities and say, we think that you need to incorporate this into the research, or this, or remove this. And so we do work with them. We are getting better at that relationship. In the past, it was just research projects that the universities could publish. Now we are making sure that in addition to the research, that we have actual recommendations out of their research on what they find within the Medicaid program to help us improve our policies and access to care.
Does that come with each study, specific recommendations as to?
Yes, that will come with each of these recommendations. We also have the 2022 reports that were just completed. Those will be posted online. Again, more than happy to send those to you, Senator Meredith, or anyone that you would like to get copies of those in the Health and Welfare Committee. And I know the committee name has changed, but we don't have the Medicaid Oversight and Advisory Committee, but more than happy to send you even summaries of those reports that were concluded last year.
Yeah, I think that'll be vital in terms of us formulating legislation for the next session, the one after that. So I would appreciate that, and very interesting process you have here. And Mr. Chair, I don't have any other questions regarding 63 through 68. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion to approve by Senator Meredith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Pollock. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Pollock.
Yes.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Now let's look at item number 19 on the gray list, the 50,000 and under. And Senator Meredith.
It's kind of a continuation of the discussion we just had. This is a separate study, it appears, that kind of deals with the same issue, and that's provider availability, network adequacy. So I think my question was, isn't this kind of redundant?
This one actually has two secret shoppers surveys incorporated into. The secret shoppers will expand on the other research project. For example, the other one is going to delve into the actual claims data in Medicaid to see how many providers are seeing how many members. This survey is actually very timely because this survey will actually call providers and say, I'm a Medicaid member, I need an appointment, and they will document the time it takes for a Medicaid member to access an appointment. I say this is very timely because the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services has recently proposed new rules related to access for managed care organizations. Currently, our contracts have a time and distance access standard. CMS is now looking at implementing actual time in days, weeks, months, rather than 60 miles or 60 minutes. They're actually looking at time frames. So this will help us come into compliance with those CMS requirements in the event that those proposed rules are enacted.
You think that's a good change?
I think it is.
Yeah, that's my gut on it. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. To have a motion for approval.
So moved.
A motion made by Senator Meredith. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Senator. Sorry about that. Senator Douglas. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Pollock.
Yes.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the pool list is with the Department for Public Health and is number 74 on the MOA pink list. If representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record.
Hello, my name is Dr. Connie White. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Clinical Affairs at the Kentucky Department for Public Health.
And I'm Andrew Young. I am the Director of Administration and Financial Management for the Department for Public Health.
Okay. Would you all please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Thank you so much. Senator Meredith.
Good morning. Appreciate you all being here. And not sure how to formulate my question because again, I'm looking at the agreement description. This covers a lot of different areas. Is federally funded. Is this a specific federal grant that's doing this?
Yes, sir.
Is there a timeline on this as well?
This particular funding ends the end of May of 2024.
24.
Yes, sir.
And what happens after 24?
Well, part of their plan is working on sustainability. So the plan will be that these innovations will, while they're being designed, will also come up with a sustainability piece so that this work can continue. If I may, the hub that is referred to in this contract is a collaboration between Humana Inc., the Humana Foundation, and the University of Louisville. Those are the leaders of this hub, and they're doing several things. They're working on sustainability and of upskilling and reskilling staff, people to get into the healthcare industry because of their backgrounds, trying to help people have family sustaining jobs, and they also want to do some health innovation by trying and piloting some innovative ideas. So that's the part that the Department for Public Health funding is going toward, is working with that kind of like a learning laboratory to take innovative ideas and try to operationalize those in a community to see if we can maybe find some things that work, some promising practices, and package those so other communities can use them too in these 3 areas that are listed: food insecurity, maternal health, and non-emergency transportation.
Well, another thing that caught my attention was that we're going to hire a facilitator to serve as a conveyor, identify and recruit, convene community partners. Again, at the end of a grant, I'm concerned is part of this funding for this in future. There's a possibility of a legislative request for funding.
That's not something that's crossed our table that I'm aware of. I think they're hoping that this is going to be something as they show good outcomes. There'll be entrepreneurs, there'll be businesses, there're going to be people in the community that are going to want to continue to support this work.
I think it can be. I would certainly hope so. Is this pretty much urban centric though, or does it have applications in rural Kentucky as well?
Well, this particular piece is a Jefferson County project, but they have worked with ARH on similar project. They're working with ARH and UK, and the plan is that once you get this to be shown to be operational and workable in a community, that you can use it in other communities that don't have resources to do this kind of work. So the key is, that sustainable piece that I talked about, but design it so that it's community-centric, so the communities, whether they're large or small, can take the work that they're doing in this laboratory learning experience to use in their communities. So that's their hope. In fact, their hope is a national spread, not just a Kentucky spread.
Okay. Should be interesting. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One phrase, could you help me out with food justice, what that means?
I refer to as food insecurities. It's people that we know that 1 in 7 Kentuckians is food insecure, 1 in 8 children. So it's trying to look at what communities don't have, what are the barriers in different communities for food insecurity. And so it's working to find out what those barriers are, and can we find ways to work around that? Does that help?
Helps a little. May I ask just one
Yes, go
last
ahead.
question? Could you give me a definition? I know you just explained what food security is.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give me a definition of how they arrive at who is food insecure?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I looked that up. But just in case you asked that question.
Okay.
So
Well,
it's
you know me then, huh?
Well, I try to guess. Economic and social conditions of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. That's the definition that's usually used when you're talking about food insecurity.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Yes, sir. If I can find it. Economic and social conditions of limited or uncertain access to adequate foods. So either there's not a financial ability to purchase, or there's not an easy access to get to the adequate foods, not just any food, but adequate foods for a healthy diet.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? If not, do we have a motion to consider the contract reviewed without objection?
So moved.
Motion made by Senator Meredith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Pollock. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
I vote aye, but may I explain my vote?
Yes, you may.
I am voting aye. These are federal funds. I think we really need to work on that definition of food insecurity, because any particular group will be included in that particular definition on any particular day. And as a physician, I've seen that. That'll be the only comment I'll make. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, you all so much for your testimony. Let's see. The next items on the pool list are with the Department for Workforce Investment on our numbers 102 through 123 on the routine MOA pink list. If representatives are here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. Good morning, Dondra Meredith, Deputy General Counsel at the Education and Labor Cabinet.
Good morning, John Gregory, Executive Director, Office of Adult Education.
Okay. If you all would, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
All right. Thank you so much. Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate y'all being here. And I'm just trying to understand this program. We've got multiple contracts here, and most of them have the same agreement description to provide funds for services that comply with Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which we're certainly all in supportive of. But there's difference in funding levels as far as what the federal government's going to provide. Also, each agreement amount is different, so I'm just trying to figure out how these specific contracts work. You know, let me just give you a very loose example here. So the agreement types are all with Kentucky Skill U, and Nelson County's is $486,000. But Jessamine County's is $398,000, and then we got a whole list of them that I guess go back to Kentucky Community Technical College System, which are all each different. One is from 1.1 million, the next is for 243,000. So just trying to understand the program. I don't can't see how the flow of the dollars work.
Yes, sir. So just from a macro level perspective, this is a federal program that is administered by the states, the territories, and the district. And the funding dollars, the metric is based on working age folks who have not completed the high school process. That is based on a national survey, which covers the years 2017 to 2021. In Kentucky, depending upon where you're looking on that spectrum, that lands us somewhere between 300,000 and 317,000. And you can also break that down by county. So that is how the funds are broken down based on that target of folks in Kentucky that fall into that spectrum.
Okay, but can you explain to me how one contract's 38% federally funded, but the next one's only 30% federally funded? How's that determined?
That is determined by the federal-state split, and there's some nuance to it. Essentially, the Commonwealth of Kentucky gets somewhere between $9.5 and $10 million from the federal side. The federal required match is 25% of that, but there is some nuance to that. the state must match at least 90% of the previous year's match. So the model is somewhere in the range of 62% to 38%. There is some flex, but it should be pretty consistent along that model. There could be some specifics about that budget piece, and that's something that I could probably follow up on and then get back to you. But that percentage is pretty consistent as far as that range is concerned. There is some variance, but not significant variance.
That's a variance that caused me some concern. And concern is not the right word, just it poses questions for me. But, I'm looking at Agreement 102 with the Kentucky Community Technical College System for $1.1 million. Federal match is almost 31%. 103 is Kentucky Community and Technical College System, $243,000. Federal percentage is 38%. So are these each different programs?
The scope is not different. The local providers are different, and so some have one county, some have two, some have 8, 9, 10. If you take our largest ones, which is Jefferson and Fayette, so there's a difference as far as volume is concerned. So that is probably where the variance lies with respect to the volume of the target. Because if you look at the working age folks in the state of Kentucky, based on the 4.4 million total, that's somewhere around 2.7 million. And then you take 10, 11% of that, that is the focus as far as adult education is concerned. But that is different county by county as to that number and that volume.
So can I surmise that maybe 102, which is 1.1 million, could be Jefferson Community College, but the one for 243,000 may be for E-Town Community College? I mean, is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there are two. So there is the core, which is the basic things that is mandated. Then there is the English language learning and civics, which is a separate piece, and those only exist in Jefferson, Fayette, and Warren counties. So one of these, I believe, that was pulled fits into that category. Well, one, maybe two, and then those remaining are the core services.
So they're all attempting to accomplish the same goal, but as you noted, there's some nuances such as language differences that we have to factor in this that would be different. So,
absolutely, sir.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today. I want to get I guess, understand how all this works. The Kentucky Adult Education Act of 2000 and the skills pretty much the same thing, if I understand this correctly, is for GED training, that type of training. And then the other one, the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, that came around in 2014. That is a little broader for training for employment and various other things. And there is a lot of money here, but what I wonder, but there's two different paths that can work together. How successful are these, and are they, what's the placement? Are they people earning their GEDs? Are they going on to work? Is there some way that, I'm just curious how successful, or are they successful?
Very good question. So for some context, the focus in Kentucky, from what I have been able to discern since I've been sitting in this seat for approximately 2 years, is the focus has been almost exclusively on the GED. If you read the state law and the federal law, the performance requirements are based on workplace participation. So that is the key. The GED is a piece, a component to reach that end. So the GED is climbing up the mountain, but it is not the apex of the mountain. So for example, if we look at the performance requirements on the federal side, the measurable skill gain. A measurable skill gain can include getting a GED. It can include but taking a workplace test. It can include transitioning to college. It but can include training and all of those things associated with going to work. So the federal requirement for the state of Kentucky for this year was 45.2% as far as the measurable skill gain, which means that each person that we serve, at least 45% of them need to get a measurable skill gain of some sort. Kentucky has only met that requirement maybe once since 2014. We met it this year for the first time in about 5 or 6 years. So the culture and the focus is changing, but it is specifically on the workforce and workplace. The GED, for those that have not completed that is en route to doing that. So the focus and the culture has changed, specifically to the GED. This year, we concluded, well, this past fiscal year, we concluded with 2,961 Kentuckians that completed that process. Now, we're still not fully back into the jails and in that environment, so that is the 4th highest in the history. I went back 2014, 15, 16, etc. So we're moving in the right direction, but the GED is a component, but it is not the totality of the process and the circumstances. So my intent is to continue to move in that direction and to say, because the mission is to assist Kentuckians to improve their lives through instruction, training, and employment. And sometimes we forget those last two, but we're moving in the right direction as far as that end is concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can make one quick comment. I'm really pleased to hear that because certainly the GED is a very important leg of that training process.
Yes, sir.
But it's not the final stage.
Yes, sir.
So thank you for that explanation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned corrections. Is your area or your office working with corrections and providing that GED opportunities for those folks? Because my just personal opinion is that's a workforce area that I think we should, if they are obviously in a situation of rehabilitation, but obviously we don't need to shut the door in that particular area. So my question is, I think I heard you mention it a little bit. Is that something that you guys are working with and some plans in the near future?
Yes, sir. We are very intentional in that space. As a matter of fact, we have established a branch specifically for that.
Good.
So we're going to be very intentional as far as the jails are concerned. We serve as the primary instructors in the jail. Now, as far as the prisons, we supplement. But we have some challenges as far as finding folks to go into the jails, but to instruct. So we are currently in the process of trying to mitigate that, but that is something that I have really attempted to focus on, and I think we're going to see some levels of growth in very short time as far as that is concerned.
One more comment, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. Yeah, jails is what I was kind of pointing to. I've talked to several jailers and what that looks like, and they are really eager to possibly work with your group or some group. Obviously, they've got people that's going to be out in 6 months. Let's go ahead. And every situation's different, and they know what best situation it is for these people to get their lives back and put them back in the workforce, which obviously we're creating jobs, but we need to find people to fill those jobs. So
yes, sir. So we have a program called Putting Kentuckians First, which is specifically for the jails. It started in Russell, and we have seen great levels of success. So we are now in the scalability stage. So we're scaling this up, just going across the different counties across the state of Kentucky.
Good deal. Thank you,
That
Mr.
is
Chair.
specifically for jails.
Thank you.
Senator Douglas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you very much for the presentation and the direction that we're at least trying to go in. I agree with Senator Meredith. This is a large number of contracts, and as I am coming to understand, what we're looking at is measurable skill gain. Now, my question ultimately, and I know this is I wouldn't say a difficult population, but certainly can be challenging. Let's just use that word. We're looking at people who go into the workforce. We want people to enter the workforce. Two questions, if I may, and I'll throw them out very quickly. Number one, is there any, shall I say, requirement that if you're going to go through these programs, there has to be an end point? We want you to attempt, or we want you to make an attempt to get into the workforce, because otherwise we're filling up the truck and we're not putting any drivers in there. We are giving people the skills, but they're not utilizing the skills, and therefore we're not really getting a very efficient end product. And that's kind of my concern with some of the programs where we go in and we hold hands and we do the things we can to get people sort of up to speed, and then they sit down.
Yes, sir. So there is not a requirement on the Kentuckian. The requirement is on the state of Kentucky as far as the rate that we need to reach. So I have been, so I'll choose my words advisedly, very focused as far as the local provider network is concerned, to let them know that we absolutely need a return on the investment. So not only for the dollars, but for the investment in the Kentuckian, for them to be able to move forward. So for example, as far as the workplace is concerned, in fiscal year 22, we had 277 folks that came through who went into that space. This year we had 516. So we are moving in the right direction. So we're making some vertical movement. But the requirement is on the contractor, because they bid and they stipulated that they could do these things. Now, if you look back from a longitudinal standpoint, there was no forcing function to say, hey, look, you need to bear your share of the performance requirements. We have done that, and I have intentionally put language in the contract to say that if you're not on pace, that we will make a decision as to whether or not we need to recompete that counties, et cetera, in order to inspire better performance across the board. But if you look at it, Kentucky has had the same contractors for decades. And potentially on the front end, there needs to be greater levels of competition to see if there are potentially some other vendors out there who can do a better job. That's just the competitive process. But we are in the second year of the 3-year cycle. So this is the beginning of the second year. So we're going to take a look at the conclusion of the first quarter to see where the measurement stick lies. And if individuals, as far as the contractors, are not on pace, then there is an opportunity to recompete and see if we can find a vendor potentially to come in and do better by Kentuckians.
I'm all behind education and providing opportunities.
Yes, sir.
But again, you'll hear me say over and over, I'll use the taxpayers to say the taxpayers are looking for an end product. An end product, with all due respect, the end product is not someone who goes through a program and learns things. The end product is someone who goes through a program and utilizes those things for the benefit of the other people around them. And that's what I'm looking at from these programs, not just to help people feel good, not just to show them, not just to give them a bunch of fish, but to teach them how to fish and make them get out there in the damn boat.
Yes, sir.
And actually fish.
And that's what the federal law states.
Okay.
That is exactly what the definition states in the federal law, which is the way that we're going now. When I came on, the focus was exclusively GED with little discussion regarding what you just stipulated. But that is what the law states, and that is the direction that the office is going in.
In the
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in and add that the program has been actively working with the Kentucky Career Centers, hand in hand with that to ensure that the GED is not just the end result, as Dr. Gregory has mentioned.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a motion to consider the contract reviewed without objection?
Motion to approve contracts 102 through 123.
Second.
Motion made by Senator Meredith, second by Senator Douglas. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Douglas,
Aye.
Senator Yates, Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Senator Meredith, Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
The final item on the pulled list is with the Department of Education and is number 220 on the routine MOA pink list. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record and come forward.
Good morning. My name is Karen Worth. I'm a director in the Division of Budgets and Financial Management.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Tucker. I'm the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Equity Officer with the Kentucky Department of Education. I work primarily with the Office of Teaching and Learning.
Okay, would you all please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank
I
you
do.
so much. And Senator Meredith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Here we are again. I've always pre-discussion we've had about this subject, and the reason I pulled this contract is a little bit different. I hope you all understand and appreciate the kind of concern that these contracts we've seen heretofore have been part of a federally funded grant, which is supposed to expire in 2024. But this one is specifically funded through the general fund 100%. And the first question I have is the structure of it, because the agreement description says provide funds for the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Belonging, help educators in the Commonwealth understand and implement these terms through strategic planning, presentations, support visits, and more. If it's a statewide initiative, why is this with the Jefferson County Board of Education?
And I can speak a little bit about that, and then I'll turn it over to the our expert here. First, there's a typo. That position, the DEIB position, Senator Meredith, and by the way, good morning to you and all the members of the Government Contract Review Committee. Always a pleasure to talk about the happenings at the Kentucky Department of Education to improve and save the lives of young Kentuckians especially. The DEIB position is actually a federally funded position through our ESSER dollars, so it should not be funded through the state general fund. although it still is a memorandum of agreement with the Jefferson County Public Schools, and so we are addressing that need.
As far as the vendor being Jefferson County, the employee that's listed, he is an employee of Jefferson County. So KDE oftentimes borrows staff from school districts for them to come to KDE, bring their expertise at a district level, and apply it across the state. So this particular gentleman, he is an employee of Jefferson County. He remains an employee of Jefferson County. They continue to pay his salary, and then we pay Jefferson County for the salary while he is working for the Department of Ed.
It's a pretty good salary.
It's about the average salary. There are folks in Jefferson County and school districts across the Commonwealth of Kentucky who earn more money than this person, but it also includes, if you look at some of the pages back, it also includes the fringe benefits as well as the cost of doing business with Jefferson County Public Schools, which is not unusual. So you have the retirement benefits and health benefits, and et cetera. Those benefits are customary, and his salary is not out of line with equal folks at Jefferson County Public Schools. And I also want to point out the job description really doesn't, I probably should have done a better job the first time this was when we talked about this contract, I believe last year, is that the work that this individual does is far reaching than the job description. Again, Senator Meredith, in a very wise fashion, you asked the question, well, why is this contract exclusively with Jefferson County Public Schools? The work that this individual does spans beyond Jefferson County Public Schools. We were here a while ago, and I don't remember what month it was. We talked about the Kentucky Department of Education providing funds to pay for AP exams. And again, big thanks to the General Assembly for helping us do that, because it's not the agency's money, taxpayers' money, as Senator Douglas often remarks. But I want to thank you all for providing funds for AP exams, international baccalaureate exams, and those other high-stakes exams for entry. So we're not a single parent pays more than $10, regardless of their need for those college entrance exams. So this individual heads this up. And one of the more touching things, as you know, we've dealt with tornadoes in western Kentucky and flooding in eastern Kentucky. This individual has provided support in those areas with teachers and with other staff folk who have been in great need. And also, I want to mention suicide prevention. We've had conversations here about preventing and mitigating suicide. Our goal is to reduce that number down to 0. And this individual has provided support for every school district here in the Commonwealth to reduce suicide rates here in our great state.
Let me go back to the funding. The contract, to which I happen to have a copy here, says it's 100% general funds, not federal funds. But you're saying that's not correct?
No, we are in the process of changing that. And then, as you appropriately mentioned again, that these funds will expire the end of the 23-24 school year. So I've already put in a request to change that.
And that's my concern, is when this expires, then we've got 9 regional directors plus this person. We've got DEI that's embedded throughout our education system. And I don't know why we continue going down this path when I read more and more articles and studies saying that DEI is not the right approach. As a matter of fact, it's not accomplishing what it's intended to accomplish. It's actually becoming a tool that's very divisive within our school systems. I can give you a list of articles, one most notably from the Harvard Business Review just recently, that says it's not working. As a matter of fact, it's causing division within schools, it's causing division within business, and we need to go a different path. So why are we continuing to pursue this if it's a failed philosophy?
Well, I would wholeheartedly disagree that it is a failed philosophy. That is the opinion of one author, and I'm sure you could find 1,000 articles with the opposite. And if you'll allow me to indulge for less than 60 seconds here. Last week, the Gallup Walton Family Foundation team released its first of many insights about the state of youth in the United States. Close to half of students, 48%, gave their school an A grade for respecting who they are regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, and identity, with an average grade of B for schools on this important metric, which involves respecting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Wallet Hub, which is becoming a really respected organization that is owned by TransUnion Credit Report, has rated Kentucky the 7th most equitable state in the union when it comes to equity in education. And it's not necessarily about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's about funding. It's about prioritizing meeting the needs of all students. So with those 4 letters being diverse, being both diverse and divisive, as you mentioned, you would easily find studies where people who repute those findings, but you can find plenty of studies that will show that it's working, and it's working here in Kentucky. In regards to how we're going to continue this, as we said from day one, we asked you all to support this work, that we would, every day we would build in continuity. We would work with our 8 education co-ops to take positions that are already there and expand their roles to open up opportunities for students. And given the latest political national action regarding students in K-12 and especially higher ed, there is no time in the history of this country, certainly within the last 58 years, for us to ensure that we are including every student regardless of their background, their ethnicity, places of worship, and including them in the educational processes.
I think we would agree to that, but again, it's how we accomplish that goal. You mentioned that we funded testing for AP. I think that helps move that along. That's not really a DEI initiative. It's an attempt to improve the quality of education for every child, and it doesn't have to be just because you may be a minority. Yeah. But again, I know you're going to give me a list of things to say that, yeah, this is great, but I can give you the same list that says, no, it's not, it's divisive. Yeah. And I would like to see us focus more on merit, fairness, and equality. I think we're setting up a system where children who are disadvantaged will view themselves as victims and can never lift themselves up because you've robbed them of any hope. They say they're a victim of the system. You can't beat the system. And one of the studies I read last night said one of the problems with this is that whatever training you provide to employees is short-lived. Maybe a day, 2 days, but it's not lasting. And we need to have a more positive approach rather than continuing to look in the retrospect about how the world has been treated. I'm being quite candid with you. I think for Jefferson County specifically that DEI is a red herring to divert attention away from the failures of the system for years. Now that is a racist situation it's caused that, but I don't think that DEI is the solution to the problems for our education system in the Commonwealth.
And Senator Meredith, I could not agree with you more, but I want to make sure we understand this distinction. Kentucky has not called out groups. Mm-hmm. Kentucky, we've been very purposeful with the Kentucky Department of Education. As I said earlier, we brought in all groups. Mm-hmm. We have not allowed groups to see themselves as victims. Mm-hmm. We've not singled out any separate group. And remember, these initiatives that I talked about didn't have anything to do with race, didn't have anything to do with socioeconomic status, did not have anything to deal with sexual orientation or anything of that nature. Our goal has been and will continue to be to support all students regardless of their background. And again, I think that's one of the reasons nationally Kentucky is being respected for reaching the needs of all students and not as you said, not victimizing individual students.
Then let's call it something else. Let's just get away from the terms of DEI altogether. Let's call it something else.
That's why we added belonging. I'm okay if we call it something else. I'm fine with that. But that's why I purposefully, over a year and a half ago, added belonging to it. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel a sense of belonging.
I think so. But, a lot of that is evidenced by how we function as a state. We had a Commissioner of Education who was an African American. I know you know him well. Thought he's a quality individual. Experience in the urban area. For a period of time was homeless himself, he and his wife. Thought he did an excellent job as commissioner, and the first thing that happens when we change administration is he gets fired and replaced by, a white guy. Does that really suggest that we're embracing the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah,
isn't that a terrible message to send to people?
I wasn't here regarding that, but I will say this, and I'll say it unapologetically. I don't know this individual, but I'll say this. We currently have one of the, if not the best commissioner in the country, in Jason Glass, and shame on the state if we don't support him. I'll stand by that any day. And he embraces exactly what you just said, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of background, native Kentuckian. So everybody can do this work if we believe every student here in Kentucky can be successful.
I think we all agree with that. It's, again, I guess, how we package this thing and promote it. But
totally
I think
agree.
It's interesting. We had a former governor that accused teachers of being thugs, and that was taken out of context and ended up losing an election. But Commissioner Glass has said if you don't embrace the pronoun situation, teachers need to find another job. Is that really a remark that you would expect from a leader?
I'm not here to adjudicate anything, but I can certainly tell you, whether it's you or anyone, that comment from Dr. Glass was taken out of context, totally out of context. And I don't need to speak for him. He can quite speak well for himself. He's known for speaking well for Kentucky and himself across this country and actually nationally. What he simply said is that there are state guidance and there are federal guidance, that if people don't believe in respecting the rights of all folks or don't believe in following that guidance, this is probably not the best pursuit of their interest. So the interpretation that, and again, I don't have to speak for Dr. Glass, but the interpretation that Dr. Glass said, if you don't believe in LGBTQ plus rights, you shouldn't have this job, that is overly and wrongfully exaggerated, because the commissioner that I work for believes in the rights of all students and teachers.
And I would assure you that 138 members of the legislature feel exactly the same way. But what we struggle with is limited financial resources. We have for years. At least when I've been in the Senate, we have made a firm commitment to public education. We've increased SEEK funding every biennial that I have been here. This next budget is going to be extremely challenging because of the loss of federal funding, but I think we're still committed to funding for education. But I'd rather see $141,000 spent on enhancing our reading and comprehension skills than continue to pursue a program of DEI. That's where I come from.
And again, this is not just about DEI. If you look at some of the work that this individual does, he also provides support for standards as it relates to literacy. I have the pleasure of not only serving as a deputy commissioner, I also oversee, if you will, supervise, collaborate in the Office of Teaching and Learning. I want to thank you all for your tremendous support of literacy, especially early literacy. So I get an opportunity to do that, but I also have an opportunity to help challenge and support our people, ensuring that every student, whether they're from the inner city or rural areas, extremely rural areas like I am from, that they have the support to learn how to read and understand numeracy. And so that title is more than just the name. And I agree with you. Maybe we need to come up with a different name. But please rest assured, members, that your state here is not singling folks out and making them into victims. Again, a national organization has named Kentucky the 7th most equitable state in the union, and is for the exact reason, Senator Murray, that you just mentioned, you just enumerated. It was that the tremendous work you've done to provide and support public education, because at the end of the day, only 10% of our funding in our public schools come from the federal government. It's mostly from the local and the state.
Well, maybe that has nothing to do with the programs that we've adopted over the past decade. Maybe it's the fact that people in Kentucky are just good people. You know, I was a hospital CEO in a small rural hospital for 30 years. Took the job in 1983. We had contracts to provide physician coverage for our ER. And I remember one of the first decisions I had to make was the recruitment firm came to me and said, we've got a good physician we'd like to place here, but he's African American. Is that a problem? Because I think rural communities always are cast in a negative light, that we're backward, that we're prejudiced, and I can assure you that we're not. I said, no, not an issue whatsoever, as long as he's a good person, he's a good clinician, and he treats people with respect. I tell you, this guy was one of the most popular physicians I ever had in my ER. And many physicians of color that I recruited during my 30 years there were well received by our community. And I think that's just not an exception for Grayson County. I think it's into our Commonwealth. We're a good state that we don't get enough credit. So I don't think it has to do with anything with any programs. I don't know of a single educator that really wants to see any child fail regardless of the color of their skin or the socioeconomic background. So I think we're investing too much effort into these programs and not providing those funds for basic education. You mentioned rural. If you want to talk about equitable situations, rural communities are not being treated equitably. They're not. Haven't been for years. Why aren't we addressing that?
And this position addresses it, and I do believe that Kentucky is a great state. It's one of the reasons I chose to come here, and I chose to come here to work with Dr. Glass, the Kentucky Board of Education, and the 40,000 plus teachers and other staff members here. And I want to reemphasize this, and then I'll leave this alone. I understand your point, but we get in trouble, folks, from time to time when we deduce DEIB down to race. And again, we've stayed away from race. So we just can't narrow it down to black and white. It's much bigger than that. And again, I think it's one of the reasons we've been successful here in Kentucky.
And I hope we continue that success, but I'll end it with this, Mr. Chair, and sorry to belabor this point, but I was reading about a noted psychologist who resigned from his National Association because of embracing DEI. And in his words, what it does is divide, it doesn't unite. And I think that's the problem that we have with this program, is because of the perception around it, whether it's real or not, it's divisive. It doesn't unite us. And I don't think we need to go down this path, but that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion to consider the contract review without objection? All right. Do I have a motion for disapproval?
So moved.
I have a motion by Senator Douglas for disapproval. Do I have a second? Okay, without a second, the motion fails. Contract moves forward. Thank you all so much for your testimony.
Thank you for your time and your support, members.
All right, thank you. I guess, let's see. Where am I at? All right. The committee will, that was the final item on the agenda. The committee will resume its normal meeting day next month. And the meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August the 8th, 2023 at 9 a.m. And if there's no other things to be brought forward, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment.
Motion by Senator Douglas, second by Representative. Everybody should have made that motion. We stand adjourned.